Good afternoon. Happy Savage Saturday, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the Casual Comic Guy here, and today we are here with Savage Saturday Comic Review, episode 95, and we're going to feature another famous Robert E. Howard creation, and I am talking about King Kull, or Kull of Volusia, Kull the Barbarian, Kull the Conqueror, whatever you want to call him. We are going with that character. He is a favorite of mine. His stories are great. And a very different character than Conan the Barbarian, although most people just think they're carbon copies of each other. They are not. They have different character traits. Kull's a lot less patient than Conan is, believe it or not, and a lot less inclined to take the advice of others than Conan is. Even though Conan doesn't often, he at least will entertain the thought, where Kull does not like to be questioned and likes to move forward with his original thoughts immediately without taking into account the advice of others. And part of the appeal of the Kull stories is him learning lessons from those around him, like his someone that becomes his good friend and closest guard and closest friend, Brule the Spear Slayer, right? And Kull has an alliance with the Picts, who help him out greatly. And Kull, again, very, very impetuous, especially for a king. And he's got to learn the hard way to follow the advice of others that are, and advice that's meant in the best way it's given to help protect him, to help protect the land, to help protect those around him. And this story is one that displays that inclination to ignore advice and the lesson learned from it. So without further ado, this is the first full appearance of King Kull. Of course, his first cameo appearance was in Conan the Barbarian, #1 from 1970. This is from 1971, and this is Creatures on the Loose 10. We have cover art here by Herb Trimpe, all right, and with inks by Marie Severin and Maury Coromado. So a fantastic cover. A lot of fun. I always like a good fighting cover, especially with creatures on it. And inside, we have a Roy Thomas adaptation from a Robert E. Howard story with Bernie Wrightson art. How can you go wrong? Well, you can't. It's fantastic. And this story was only half of this book. The other half we won't get into. So we'll start out with the beginning, right? It says King Kull. In the time before the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, in the legend-laden days before the dawning of the Hyborian Age, the man called Kull rides proudly at the head of his hand-picked guardsmen. But beware, monarch of the mighty Volusia, for ahead lies terror, ahead waits stark, unfathomable fear, ahead lurks the Skull of Silence. So what a great intro. How could you not want to read this story? As adapted by Roy Thomas, with art by Bernie Wrightson, one of the classics, one of the best. All right, and so we're going to read this. It was a 7-page story in here, The Skull of Silence. So we got Kull riding with his Red Slayers, which is his private guard. He's like, "Come, my Red Slayers, it is still many hours' journey back to our city of wonders, and this mountain path may well prove treacherous, but darkness shrouds these buried peaks." Whew, I don't know why that word tongue-tied me. And so he's looking for shelter for the night for him and his crew, right? And the guy with him, Kanu, says, "I suspect it is not the gathering night which drapes your thoughts, Kull. Will you share your secret sorrow with Kanu?" And Kull, in his way, he says, "You may be but a Pict, Kanu, emissary from a nation of savages, yet your eye cuts to Kull's heart like a knife. My crown weighs heavily upon my brow this day." And Kull's feeling the weight of being a ruler. The constant decision-making, the constant meetings, the constant diplomacy that he has to employ to be a king. And he's talking to Kanu about how he misses the days of just being called a barbarian, where he had nothing to do, where he was an outcast from Atlantis, and he was just ruling the days as an outlaw. And he says, "Well do I recall my outlaw days in the high, windy hills of Volusia and the heady freedom that was mine. Even when later my sword sang for Volusia as a soldier in her arms, I was still a freer man than any king or scented courier. Perhaps it was ambition that shackled me thus, Kanu. Perhaps I should never have slain the tyrant Vorna and taken his crown from my own. So we will give you a quick pick at that opening page here. And a beauty it is. Bernie Wrightson, of course, set in a great mood. And when we get to the second page, there we have a little bit of remembrance as Culls were recalling his barbaric days to Kanu. And it says, just then, the Pict's strident shout interrupts Cull's grim musings. Look there, my friend, a castle where we can pass the night. And one of the Picts is like, no, my lords, we must not tarry there. And Cull's like, who would dispute the will of King Cull? And this is where Cull usually gets himself in trouble, right? His will is very strong, and he doesn't like it questioned. So he's more likely to ignore advice. And this guy that spoke up says, no dispute, my liege, but only advice. It was I, Kuthalos, who spoke. He says, though you are but a slave, you are still wisest of all my subjects. Say what you will, and I shall hear you out. So Cull's willing to listen to him, but at no point is he going to change his mind. But he lets Kuthalos speak as well. And Kuthalos tells him that the region is accursed because of yon black brooding castle, which men have ever called the Skull of Silence. And Cull says, I have heard of it in half-remembered legends. And Kuthalos says, then pray to Valka that it is all you do, O king. Have you ever heard silence, my lord? He goes, nay, never. For always there is a whisper of the wind, the murmur of the shifting sands. Only ancient Rama, greatest mind of all the ages, ever battled the specter of silence. With his arts and his knowledge, he imprisoned it yonder for all time. And woe unto the world if any man unleashed that what even Rama could not fully destroy. And Cull's like, enough. Rama's been dead more years than mortal man can reckon. I ride for the castle. Who rides with Cull? And not wishing to disobey the king, they ride with him towards the castle, the Skull of Silence. So, already not boding well. And as we turn the page, we'll find Cull approaching the castle, and you have Kuthalos saying, Cull, consider, I know not if the slave's words be fact or fancy. I'm sorry, Kanu. He goes, yet, if you burst the seal, you may loose upon the world a monster whose might and frenzy no man can stay. And Cull, again, not liking his will question, says, enough, I said. I'll hear no more sermons this day. And Kanu's still trying to appeal to him. But Cull, you are Volusia's protector, her king. He's like, king no longer, because the crown's been weighing on him. If it means I'm to be shackled to cobweb throne, hang my cloak and too tight crown, I'll be called a barbarian once more. And he throws his crown down in the sand in disgust. And he goes up and he breaks the seal. He says, all of you may be scared, but I'm not scared of someone that lived civilizations ago, who's been dead for a long time. There's nothing in this castle that can hurt us. And as soon as Cull breaks the seal and walks in, he is immediately started to be assaulted by the sound of silence, which is already starting to drown out his friend's words. And I really like the lettering job they did there, reducing it like it's being snuffed out. And Cull's immediately in trouble upon breaking this seal. And as he gets in, we get a little, just the descriptions in this are so good, right? The silence enters Cull's soul. It claws at his heart. It sends tentacles of steel into his brain, and it engulfs him. He can see visions of the silence spreading out over the land, blotting out all sound, all life on earth, and reaching monstrously upward until it crushes the very singing of the stars. And then Cull knows fear. For the silence lives. It twists, it rises in unholy wisps and shadows, and it destroys. And it is destroying him. Sorry, guys. Allergies are still killing me after all this time goes. But now Cull sees the gong, with its changing, shifting color, and his dizzy brain suddenly reads the riddle. Old Rama left a safeguard for the race. Even in death, the sea. The gong is like the sea. Changing green shades, now deep, now shallow, never silent. The sea, vibrating, pulsing, booming day and night. The greatest enemy of the silence. Reeling Cull catches up the jade mallet and strikes the gong. The first stroke is like a nail striking a silver coin on the other side of the universe, but the silence gives way. At each blow it shrinks back, its tentacles shortening, and still Cull strikes again like some awesome living hammer, back and back and back. Now the wisps hover in the doorway, now the silence is within the chamber again, and now... no. The Silence has gathered all its forces for one last assault. Kull reels, stunned, blinded, cloaked by the whirling tendrils which encircle him. And Kull is starting to lose the fight. He goes, but the clangor of the gong has died once more. Hells of soundless cold and noiseless flame whirl about Kull. But the Silence is somehow weaker now. And in the loathsome grasp is one who neither grants nor asks for quarter. And the Silence, the demon of the Silence, knows that it has found a fit enemy. Kull lifts up the hammer once more and strikes down with all his might and shatters the gong with the hammer. And a great ending panel here. It says, "In silence screams." So we'll take a look at the battle here. Mostly fought in silence with the banging of the gong, shrinking back to silence until Kull finally overcomes it and shatters the gong and breaking the silence in a way that the demon can't fight back with. Alright, and now that the demon has been sent to its own dimension, we get to our last page, and it says, "His warriors, pale and shaken, stagger one by one to their feet as Kull mightily swings the great door shut and drinks in the faintest sounds as a thirsty man downs cold, clear water. Gone is the specter of silence, gone forever. Back to whatever cosmic hell once spawned it, the seal of Rama stood untouched for eons before. In my folly, I shattered it." And that's an important aspect of Kull, because he can admit when he was wrong. He doesn't like it, but he'll admit it. He goes, "Let no fool break my royal seal, lest silence return again to haunt the souls of men." And then he looks to Kuthos. He says, "What is it, Kuthos?" He goes, "Your crown, my liege." He goes, "Hey, my crown." Kull picks it up once more, ponders the weight of being king, but decides it is his duty. He says, "Kull is king now. No longer for him is the dust of the arena, the parceling out of ill-gotten plunder." He places the crown once more upon his black-veined brow and finds it not quite so heavy as before. Then his loyal guards, men behind him, he rides back toward the city of wonders, with the glad music of the morning ringing in his ears. And thus ends our short tale, and we'll show you there. And it's a fun little story with a little bit of horror. Sure, it's not overly long, but it shows you an important aspect of Kull. Yes, he's rash. Yes, he didn't listen to advice, but Kull does learn. Kull does admit when he has erred, and he grows as a king and as a person. And it's a fun little tale. I love the horror in it. Definitely an A+ read for me. And I got to show you this ad because it's just a fun ad, right? In these old books, this is an ad from 1971. It says, "Join now, America's only monster fan club, absolutely free, giant life-size moon monster." Look at that fun ad. And then, of course, 3 bonus masks. Now, me being 1 year old wouldn't have understood this, but a little later, man, I would have loved that. But a fun issue, a great first introduction to Kull. If that's your first taste of the character, it's fast, it's quick, and it entices you. What's your appetite for more Kull of Atlantis? Kull of Volusia, King Kull himself, right? But that's it for this week, guys. Hope you enjoyed Savage Saturday Comic Review, episode 95. And until next time, keep it casual. Attention all, use channel sponsor Rogue Trader at theroguetraderutah.com and my code KEEPITCASUAL for 10% off your comic cleaning and pressing needs. Remember, when submitting your books to be graded, use a trusted professional.